Next up, we have a panel called RAS is Always Greener, where we will talk to RAS producers about how the industry can look to build sustainable operations that protect the environment and the company's bottom line. Moderating this panel is Maddi Badiola, who is the project leader of HTH Full Spectrum Aquaculture and the president of the Aquacultural Engineering Society. Welcome, Maddi.
Thank you, Jean. Thanks.
Before we get started, actually, I just want to thank everybody that sent in their questions to Atlantic Sapphire, and I want to keep the engagement going for Maddi's panel. So, Maddi, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks. So, good afternoon, good day to everybody. I'm going to introduce my panelists here. We have Siri Tømmerås from AKVA Group. She joined AKVA in 2021. She's the R&D director of their land-based business unit and has now taken on the position as commercial director for the land-based. Before she worked for Skretting for 10 years in Norway, and the last 5 being the product manager for the land-based unit. Also, we have Megan Sorby, operation manager of Kingfish Maine. She has more than 12 years of experience in the aquaculture industry, from hatchery manager at Golden Eagle Stable Freeze to consultant manager at True Blue Aqua. And today, Sorby, as I mentioned, is the operation manager at Kingfish Maine, and she's overseeing the construction project of the new Jonesport main facility of the company. And also we have Esben Johnson. For more than 30 years, Esben has been initiating, maturing and managing industrial projects internationally, initially within the oil and gas industry as petroleum project management professional with Shell International in South Asia, Africa, Europe, and Middle East. Subsequently, he worked a couple of years with alternative energies as hydropower, and now for the last 3 years within the sustainable blue economy projects. He is now putting together a team, partners, and other elements needed to build and put into production an onshore RAS farming facility for Atlantic salmon in Singapore. So thank you, Siri, Megan, and Esben for being here today. I'm going to give a quick introduction about the panel, and let's have the roundtable thereafter. So RAS is, as we all know, is one of the most sustainable food productions right now, but to be truly sustainable, energy should be taken into account. As just our keynote speaker Carl has mentioned the importance of energy, for example. So moreover, with the current worldwide situation, we are now being more aware how important the energy is, not only environmentally, but also economically. And to discuss some real production and approaches, we have here Megan, Siri, and Esben. So let's break the ice, and I'm gonna make a question to 3 of you, so any of you can answer. What are the greener producer procedures your company is taking or has taken in order to be more efficient energy-wise? So any of you, if you all would like to start?
Well, I can start,
Okay.
Maddi.
Yeah.
When it comes to AKVA Group, we are looking at several areas when it comes to energy efficiency. Of course, a lot of it is related to design and dimensioning, but also in operations, we have to look at how can we optimize the energy used in each and every operation facility. For instance, if you look at the degassers, which in some of our facility counts for about 35 to 45% of the energy use, they are dimensioned for maximum biomass. But we all know that this is not the case 365 days a year.
Yeah.
So we are looking at how can we optimize the use and the power use, or the how can we adjust the degasser depending on the biomass in our facilities, because we see a huge potential here to reduce the energy use.
Okay, good. Esben, do you want to continue?
Yeah. So we are in a pre-construction phase. So similarly, it's mainly on the design phase and not so much on the operation side. We are able to do anything at the moment. So we've been looking at, first of all, to make sure that the footprint is small, because the energy usage, and particularly for cooling in a tropical environment, is dependent on the size. So very compact production units and tanks. It has been a focus in this early phase. And then specifically then on the energy use, it's the movement of water. So try to minimize the length and the transportation of water. So again, coming back to compact independent production units where you don't take out the water into our central facilities, clean it up and then move it back again, but that it's all done within the individual units. And then, of course, the next thing where a lot of the energy will be going is into the actual cooling of the water in itself. Looking at different elements there, very much together with the equipment producers, but also looking at what you can do locally here to reduce the requirement through insulation, for instance, of the building, and find out where should you insulate the building. Should it be in the tanks or should it be the building itself? So I think that's where we have been focusing most of this, really on the cooling side and the movement of water to get the unit kilowatt hour per kilo fish as low as possible.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
Oh, I think both Siri and Esben make great points, and Esben kind of led into what I would say, which is to highlight the fact that every facility, even if it's part of the same company, may need to institute different energy efficiency strategies based on their location. Our parent company is in the Netherlands, and they may implement some strategies that work in that location. We obviously are here in Maine and planning the facility here, and there are some additional complications given given the climate. So that those facilities would be very different to, say, what Esben is building in Singapore. So it does come down to the location, even if it's an expansion of a facility or a copying of a facility that's already in existence.
Yes, I say, we always say there is no RAS system equal. So it's every of them is different. So yeah. So what do you think that makes your company different from the others? Do you think that you have any feature that makes different from any that you know already, or Esben, or yeah, do you want to? I mean, you're still in construction, but
yeah. So from our point, I'm not quite sure if you think here on the energy side specifically, but what
yeah,
makes
mainly, but
mainly. So I mean, our biggest difference from others is the total match between our production volumes and the local need, and that we are supplying to the local market, which is within 40 kilometers radius. That's specific, but less to do with energy. One thing that we have been on the energy side specific, we're setting up some research and study with one of the national universities there. And what we're specifically looking at is the fact that Singapore is generating 95% of its electricity, which is our main energy use, from gas. And 1/3 today of that gas comes from LNG. And that comes a little bit back to the background from oil and gas. When you take in LNG and gasify the LNG, you create a lot of cold energy. And what we're trying to see is, are there any synergies there? And that would be very specific to the location and to this project.
Okay. Siri or Megan?
Well, I think some of our points will be related to what I mentioned earlier is when it comes to operation. We have this production advisory service group that are traveling around to facilities to help them to increase productivity on the fish. That is, of course, related to more efficient, that will end up in more energy efficiency in the facility, but also cost efficiency in the facilities. So I think that's our main thing, but also that we have developed now a quite large R&D department that are able to take on research and development when it comes to having more cost-efficient solutions, or and of course energy efficient solutions.
Okay.
I think Siri brings up a good point there about looking at the whole process rather than just what is happening within your specific process. So you're taking into account all the inputs that you're bringing in. So the energy required to produce the feed, to get it to your facility, and then ultimately what happens within your box, so to speak, as using that feed most efficiently, it all plays back into the overall energy cost of producing your fish. So one of the things I think that we've really been focusing on lately is something that Carl brought up in his presentation to start us off, with respect to utilizing the waste or the solid waste from our systems. We have a complication in the sense that we are a purely saltwater facility, so our sludge does have a high salt content. But what we are finding is that use in anaerobic digesters, particularly in combination with other sludge waste in the right ratios, can actually produce a good amount of energy from a particular volume. So it's a way that we can certainly start to recycle and bring some of that spent energy back into our facility. So it's not necessarily something that we would take on. It's not a business that we want to take on in-house, but it's playing into that whole supply chain and the larger picture of how the industry is more energy efficient.
And could you tell us how much of the percentage could be done with that energy? I mean, how much of the energy could be covered with that one? I mean,
that's something we're still working out.
Okay.
I wish I had those numbers, but we are getting there, and certainly it's something that we're used to troubleshooting. I'm sure many of the facilities out there now employ solar panels where they can, and that's something that you look into in terms of how much of that can supplement your existing or ongoing operations. This is just one more thing that could maybe take another small piece of the pie. So it's implementing all the different strategies.
So related to this answer, which are your energy sources in your companies? I mean, is it just one source, or do you have different sources? You have a renewable energies, or how is?
Yeah, in the Netherlands, we actually, I'll start that one off. In the Netherlands, we're lucky because virtually all the energy that is on the grid is coming from renewable supplies, or a vast majority anyway. Many of the pictures of our facility, there is a large wind turbine right outside. That is not our wind turbine, but we get energy from wind. We get energy from solar. Right now, in the Netherlands, our own solar panels are supplementing a significant portion of our energy needs. And the same is hopefully will be implemented here in Maine. With the space that we have on the roof, we're hoping that it will supplement 30 to 40%. At least that's what it's indicating right now. So,
okay. Siri?
Yeah.
Or Sven, sorry, any of you?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I think just coming very similar to Megan also, we are pulling the electricity from the grid, but here there is very little. It's 95% of the electricity come from gas, so there's very little portion of it that comes from renewable, and I think it will take some time. Most of it will come from PV panels, which is a part of what we also have. I don't think we get up to the percentage that Megan was saying. What we have, our calculation shows we can only get up to 15% of the, but we also have higher energy needs to cooling the water. So that's perhaps the amount might be the same, but the and then we have the advantage sitting for the solar energy to sit under the equator. So we should have a good efficiency, but then need more cooling requirements. So you have to give something to, or you have to, you give something to get something.
Okay. Siri, what about you?
Yeah, for our facilities or the ones that we are building, the energy source will of course depend on which market we are building in and where we are in the world. But we see an increased interest in solar power and wind turbines, absolutely, as a supplement.
Okay. Esben, this one is for you because you work in Asia. Do you think that Asia is more or less efficient energy-wise? And how is the concern? How do you think that they are really concerned about energy efficiency? Or, I mean, I don't want to say they don't care, but I mean, how do you think is the situation right now?
Well, first, it's very different to generalize. There is no country called Asia. It's very big difference from one country to another. And even if you focus a little bit into what's closer to our playground, which is in Southeast Asia, if I look in just taking the two countries closest, so you have Malaysia and you have Singapore, and they represent probably on energy cost the two extremes. So if you take your gasoline, for instance, as a proxy for your energy costs, then Malaysia, you pay half the US gasoline price, while in Singapore, you are paying close to the European one. And electricity is not far away either. So the incentives depends a little bit on which country you are in. So here in Singapore, there is then obviously more incentives, and it's getting, you see more and more efforts coming in. But I think it's something that is coming up. It's not so close and so well developed yet as you can see, for instance, in Europe. Just look a little bit on the incentives. I mean, coming from Norway, I'm looking at EV, for instance, so electric vehicles. There, all the policies and incentives have been made, has been put in place that you have. I think last year, 65% of all new cars in Norway was EV. Here in Singapore last year, it was 8%. So the incentives has not, and the policies has not really come to the same level as in Europe, but it's coming there.
Okay, thank you. And Megan, Siri, with your extended aquaculture experience, have you seen with the years any big improvements in terms of improving the sustainability of this RAS? Because we always say that RAS is sustainable, but I think we need to think with a big boss, you know. So have you seen any improvement with the years?
Well, I can say
but yes.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. We now see that the technology and also the technology offering makes it much more possible to reduce the water use and also reduce the nutrients in the effluent. So less water going in and less nutrients going out. But in addition, when it comes to sustainability and the use of input factors or increase the efficiency of use of input factors, we know that knowledge has increased a lot over the years. So we know now much more about making the optimal environment for the fish, so that we know that it has as high performance as possible, and we know how to use the equipment much more efficiently, which then again leads to more sustainable production. So I think that we have gone a long way, but we still have a lot to do, of course. Yeah. We will not be out of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a complete, I think in every conference that you see, there's full sections devoted to energy efficiency or at least sustainability improvements. And again, it's looking across all the different ways that you can do that. In particular, there's a lot of focus on the circular economies that this industry can offer, and ways to implement different products. So I think as Siri was saying, I think there's so much work that's been done. We all, as Carl highlighted, their RAS system and the way they operate it is unique. And I think we would all argue that for our various applications. But all those components have been around for a long time. We're now just getting to a point where we know how to use them better. We're knowing how to formulate specific diets better. We're knowing how to recycle products or maximize those energy efficiencies and inputs better, so that the whole process together and the counterparts, the inputs that we bring into our facilities, bring us more bang for our buck, so to speak.
So what do you think about, for example, we always talk about the management of the RAS systems. So do you think also having more prepared people, more skilled people will lead to a more sustainable industry, right? I mean, I think it's something that we need to go for. So I mean, it's my idea, but I don't know your point with your experiences. So
I think the industry is also getting large enough that we're getting some attention from skill sets from other industries, as in people are repurposing their existing skill sets and applying them to aquaculture. So you get people shifting focus from, say, oil and gas over to fish farms because they find it interesting, and they have a very different viewpoint on somebody that is maybe classically trained in specifically aquaculture. So we have significant gains to be had from bringing different people into the fray, different skill sets that have been applied in different industries and now can come into ours and incorporate that alongside the biological aspects.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also the story about the sustainability related to this industry is big, gives us the possibility to draw the right people from, for instance, oil and gas and other exciting industries.
Good. We are running a little bit out of time. So Esben, coming, as Siri was pointing out, coming from the gas and oil industry, which are the ideas that could be applied in the RAS industry, coming from the other industry you're coming from? Or do you think that there are any?
Absolutely. And I think both Siri and Megan was touching upon getting these skills. And one of the things that I think the oil and gas industry has been very good at over the years is building up project management skills. They developed specific framework for taking a project through different gates, and it's a very disciplined way of taking through projects, which I think brings a lot of good things to this industry. And also, I think Carl also indicated that this is a very capital-intensive industry, which have different aspects to it than smaller projects, and that's also, of course, something that the oil and gas is very much familiar with, where there is a long time from your first cash out in starting a project until you actually get the revenue. You're talking about years. And I see that, especially here when I've been trying to get funding, is very different from getting funding for an IT project or some apps project, where you can also scale things much easier. So there's a whole lot of, and then perhaps the last thing I think is also useful there is that oil and gas also learned very much with the NTR, which is the non-technical risk. And of course, we are all hitting that in the RAS industry, specifically when you take things up on land and into the backyard of everybody, you get a whole raft of NTRs or non-technical risks that need to be managed. And that's also elements that the oil and gas can skill sets from managing that one and how to best handle it and that they can bring to this industry.
Okay. And the last question, with as I mentioned before, with the worldwide situation right now, has your system been impacted economically by the Ukrainian invasion? And how is the energy consumption right now? And do you expect any stop in any operational cost, any operational stop in your company due to this particular situation?
I think we're all affected by it in some more distantly than others. You know, but with the state of globalization at the moment, I mean, it's any activity like that which is going on in Ukraine has ripple effects the world over. So it may not be as impactful, say, to our facility here in Maine, but it certainly does have an impact on our company as a whole. So I don't think anybody probably on this entire webinar could say that they aren't affected by it in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both for us, both price-wise and availability has been really difficult. We came from a hard place after the pandemic and went into a even harder place. So where does this stop? To answer your next question, when it comes to how is the energy consumption now, well, it depends on how you cool your water, of course. But if you have a post-smolt facility in Norway with the possibility of seawater cooling, you are at 3.5 to 4.5 kilowatt per kilo fish. But if you have to have cooling of water, you will end up in a quite different place when it comes to this. But for now, of course, there is a lot of focus on OPEX when they are making these investment decisions. So I see that the decisions takes longer time now for several. Of course, we have a special situation in Norway now based on some other things when related to taxes, but absolutely, we have seen a much higher focus on the energy use and the cost of running the facilities than we have done earlier, especially in Norway and.
Ben?
No, I can just describe what has been said. I mean, the hopes were high when we were coming out of COVID, and it was crushed with this. So I agree also that I hope this is the last event that because it has put in a lot of uncertainty all around, and of course funding is very difficult when there is uncertainty around, and there is certainly enough of that.
Okay, so now I'm getting some of the questions from the audience. This one is for you, Megan. Can you comment on the success that Kingfish Maine had placating environmental opposition to their facility in Maine? What lessons can you share that is the resistance?
Oh, no, it's okay. I think I understand the question.
Okay.
We did have a bit of resistance, a lot less than some of the other groups that have been here. I think we had tremendous support from Jonesport, from the people of Jonesport throughout our process. I think they see what we are trying to do, and being a traditional fishing community, they see this as something that could synergize really well with what they do, and their traditional livelihoods. I think I think the resistance that we have seen comes from a lack of understanding about our process, comes from a lack of understanding about our industry. And because of that, it's easy to create clouds of misinformation. So events like this and public discussion about all the ways that we are trying to increase sustainability become extremely important. And let's face it, everybody on here could talk for hours about the various aspects of what we do, and we're all very passionate about it. So a lot of that success comes down to that ongoing communication and trying to make that passion contagious. It is a shift. It's a shift from traditional fisheries, but as so many meetings have highlighted lately, there are ways to marry those two things so that it is global seafood production and not global fisheries or global aquaculture production. So I think there's tremendous energy from highlighting aspects of our industry that people can get connected with, like implementation of different energy strategies and ways we are trying to be creative and circular in our approaches. So I think finding ways to communicate that and show all the ways that we can be a more responsible farming application than what we have now in terms of other proteins takes us a long way in terms of winning community support for all of our projects.
So related to that, as we all know, RAS is an expensive investment in infrastructure. So wouldn't it be better to have to rear species with a higher turnover rate? And they have an example like poultry, for example, or so. The question says that even or instead of making salmon or seriola, for example, making more easier turnover species. That's the question.
Siri, you want to take that one?
Well, now I would like to talk about nutrition and the fatty acid coming from the salmon and the amino acid profile of all fish. So, but of course, you could always argue, should we go into something else? But then you will lack the very important seafood in our diet. So we need to eat more fish. Period.
That's for sure.
So we have to produce it because it's not enough in the seas. So
I think if you look at recent reports from the Defense Fund, looking specifically at food security and global food security, some of the best strategies that we can implement in terms of efficiency and efficiency in terms of our own human energy is providing and growing or harvesting the most nutrient dense foods or the most nutrient rich foods that we can. And as Siri said, we need to eat more seafood. That is one of the most nutrient rich profiles that we can put in our bodies. And you can see it in those communities where, they source 90 or even 100% in some cases of their their protein intake, animal protein intake from seafood. And in terms of efficiencies in aquaculture versus conventional or terrestrial agriculture, we do have some things to gain over poultry and cattle and pork. So I think looking at those aspects, not just what we're growing, but what we get out of it at the end of that chain is as important to that conversation about choices about what we grow.
Absolutely.
Just as a note, here in the Basque Country, we eat 37 kilos per person a year. So that's a lot. So yeah, we have a lot of seafood. So as I think our last question will be, here they say, if cooling of input water is one of the major issues, why not increase the CFB, the cumulative feed burden? That's the question. Why don't we focus on increasing the cumulative feed burden instead of other things? No answer?
I think I would need a little bit more context on what
me too.
thinking there. But
Esben, any thoughts?
No, I agree. I don't really see the connection there. So need a little bit more context to see how
Yeah.
that those would work against each other or could solve the problem.
Okay, so I think we are running out of time now. So thank you, three of you, for being here today. And see you around at some conference or something. And thank you also to RAStech for this panel.
Thank you, Maddi.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Maddi, for this insightful panel, and thank you to all of our panelists for offering their expertise and their experience